good buddy of mine and colleague, Mike Francisco. He is with Raymond James, the SSG Advisory Group. He is a managing partner there. And we also have Lee Shields. He is a partner in CPA with Friedman LLP. And then we have Matt Burney. He is a business services officer with BB&T, now Truist. So these guys are in the trenches every single day and working around the clock for their clients, getting a lot of this stuff, a lot of these loans through and a lot of the questions answered for their clients. So I'm going to flip it over to Mike Francisco. He's going to ask some questions of these fellas and try to get your questions answered as well. You can text us during this. We are fielding questions. If you want and have a question, there it is up on the screen, 856-446-3644. So feel free to text us anytime, and we'll try to answer as many questions as possible. All right, so Mike, over to you, buddy.
Thank you, Sam, bro. I really appreciate you having me here today. It's a pleasure and honor to be with you folks. And in a time period, a 5 to 6 week time period where there's been a lack of clarity, it's been a very, very anxious time period. And not only do we have to worry about the health component of all this, but also the business component of it as well, which is extremely important as we move forward and come out of this. So I'm going to pepper Lee and Matt with some questions here about the government assistance that's coming out and is actually in the process, timelines, execution, all that good stuff to hopefully provide some details that are informative. So Lee, let's start with you. The Payroll Protection Act, or excuse me, the Payroll Protection Plan is really the hot topic. If you could, give us kind of a walkthrough, top level view of how that works and what business owners should be thinking about when it comes to that.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Sam, for setting this up. So how do we get here? When our politicians enact new tax legislation, they usually take 3, 6, 9 months. And even with that time frame, there's loopholes or things they miss, things that be fixed over the next period of time after that. This was done in a matter of 2 types of regulations, rules, things that need to be done, but they were 15 something was said, but on page 21, it contradicted what was previously said in the same document. So what's been left is for people like you and me to try to figure out exactly what the answers are to these questions. The program in and of itself is the best of the best, right? So the SBA 7(a) program typically comes with some strings, right? It's a very difficult application, collateral, personal guarantees. There's a lot of things going on. This one is not your normal. To not have personal guarantees is a great thing. To not need collateral is another great thing. But the real carrot here is forgiveness, right? So there's $350 billion out there on the table right now being funded. I've had clients already get their check to help you with small business. Remember the name of this, Paycheck Protection. So you apply. How much can you apply for? It's all based on payroll. So you grab your payroll. Huge controversy of what the definition of payroll is. At the end of the day, there's really 3 buckets: your payroll for your employees, your health insurance for your employees, and any required retirement matches. You put those 3 together for an average monthly number based on the last 12 months. You multiply that times 2.5, and that's the max loan you're allowed to borrow. The forgiveness begins when you get funded, right? So if over the 8 weeks when that clock starts, once you get your wire into your account, you have 8 weeks to spend that money on 4 qualified items: payroll, again, rent, utilities, and mortgage interest. At least 75% of that money that you receive has to be paid on for payroll, right? They really want you to get your employees back to work. And at the end of the 8 week period, if you spend all the money that you borrowed on those 4 items, you don't owe a dime back to the government. It is completely forgiven. And that's why everyone's going for the Paycheck Protection Program. There are other programs out there, but they don't have the provisions like no collateral, no personal guarantees, forgiveness. So it's really the best of a 1% rate on your loan. Lot of little things inside of this package that have caused great controversy. Do independent contractors and sole proprietors qualify? Do partners in a partnership qualify? Mike, there's just so many inconsistencies that we've had trouble, getting through them and trying to figure out exactly what the SBA wanted. It's all over the internet. I think the people applying are confused. The banks are confused because they're not getting the guidance. So it's really today applications are being submitted. And as I said, I've had several clients already get their check, and which means the loans are being funded. Mike, that's a very, very high level. There's so many little questions behind the scenes. I don't know if you had any, or if anybody wanted to, or if you wanted to.
Well, let me jump in there and ask you about that. So the part where you flipped and said the 1% interest rate that's due over a 2-year period, that's for any monies that you would spend that are not on payroll, utilities, rent, or mortgage interest, correct?
That's correct, Mike. Yep.
Okay. And like you said, you have 6 months of basically freedom there, and then you have 18 months where it's got to be paid back, and you amortize it on a monthly schedule or however you want. How does that work?
It just said 24-month term right now. You would imagine that'll be just turned out on a monthly schedule. Yep.
Okay.
Like real quick, if I could just interrupt for 1 second. I have restaurants and other industries that aren't open right now. What if they got their check today, but the government has said you can't open up, right? For security reasons, safety reasons, you cannot operate. Well, they're not incurring payroll right now. So no-show job and get the loan forgiven, or do you hold off on you need to get back to work by June 30th, and there will be an allocation. The loan forgiveness has wage and employment criteria, right? So they want you to bring everyone back at a similar pay level that they were before all this started. And there's a whole formula, and you need to make sure you jump through the right hoops. But so if you borrowed $100,000 and you didn't have the same number of employees, or at least pay them 75% of their previous wage, and a piece of your loan won't qualify for forgiveness. So is a good thing. And if you are fortunate enough to get it, on that topic real quick, so there's 350 billion out there. They're expecting 1.2 trillion in applications. So theoretically, maybe 1 out of 3 get it. If you are lucky enough to get it, then work starts, right? So then you need to start talking about what you're going to pay in those 8 weeks, Mike. And then also make sure you have the workforce and the pay eligible for the forgiveness.
Okay. There was a component in the act where I saw if I have employees that are making more than $100,000, they're phased out, or if I'm the business owner and I pay myself, let's say $250,000 a year, how would that be treated as I'm going through this payroll process with the money that's been funded by the government? If I max them out at 100,000, are they just completely avoided? How's that work?
Yeah, they're absolutely includable. If you're an S corp owner and you pay yourself a salary, you are includable in the calculation up to 100,000. One of the biggest controversies was, what about the other big 2 components, health insurance and retirement? Many people thought that it was a $100,000 cap altogether. It's not. It's not. So, Mike, in your
Coming out of this and looking back on 2020 as I'm going to prepare and do taxes and things of that nature, is there something that I should be focusing on to put aside for this year in addition to things that I've done in the past as a result of this, or where should my head be on that?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of communication, right? Because a lot of people maybe use Safe Harbor for their estimates, no reason, right? Because 2020 is probably not going to be the year that it was in 2019. There's a couple other things they put in this act that are game changers. They increase the interest expense deduction limitation from 30% to 50. NOLs can be carried back. Think about NOLs being 3 years ago, rates were higher. Individual rates were 39.6, now they're 37. Corporate 35, now they're 21. So you could theoretically take a loss back now that you incurred in a lower income year and take it back against a higher tax bracket. I just think communication is going to be key. I think most people know now their returns are not due in a week. In addition to that, their first estimates are not due in a week. Those are both due July 15th. They are silent right now as to the June 15th estimate. So we're going to hopefully push that as well. But as of right now, it's just going to be a lot of communication this year with regards to planning and making sure everything's structured properly.
Okay. I was also doing a little due diligence, and I saw things about payroll tax deferral, employee retention credits. Those are in addition to the payroll protection plan. Can you touch a little bit on those?
Yeah, you got to be careful. It's you can only pick one of those plans. The PPP is the one that most are going for, but the employer retention credit, it's a pretty good little plan. You have to have at least a reduction in 50% of your revenue. But if you have over 100 employees, you can take a credit for anyone that's been affected. If you have under 100 employees, you can take a 50% credit on the wages. So stop there for 1 second to think about that. If you have a person that you pay $10,000 to, you're eligible for a 50% credit at $5,000 on your payroll taxes when you file your next 941. So you got to be really careful. If you're one of those unlucky people who don't get a PPP, the employer retention credit is a very good credit. It's dollar for dollar on your next 941 payroll taxes. The Social Security tax deferment you referred to is another good program. If you aren't in the PPP program, the 6.2% match that business owners have to do on their employees' payroll, it's from now until December 31st, it is turned off. And whatever that number is, you pay half of it in 2021 and half of it in 2022. So a lot of good programs out there. It's not just a one size fits all. You got to pick which one's best for your particular situation.
But to be clear, if you qualify for the PPP, the payroll protection plan, these other sources are not available to you.
Yeah, that's what we read, Mike. Yep.
Okay, great.
Hey, Michael, I have some
ahead.
questions getting text in.
Okay, good.
Lee, you covered a couple of these. And again, if you guys want to text your questions in 856-446-3644. All right. You might have touched on this before, but how would you handle a dual career request, meaning both careers are independent contractors? So I guess they mean they don't have actual payroll. It's just themselves. Are they eligible for the PPP?
And that is the biggest controversy right now. There's really three questions on the PPP application. You know, the main one is your average monthly payroll on February 15th, or for the last 12 months. If you're an independent contractor, you most likely don't have payroll.
Right.
If you're a sole proprietor, you don't have payroll. How do you answer that question? The real big question is also, what is the total number of employees you had? You don't have employees. Yet this act is eligible for sole proprietors and independent contractors. And another big controversy is this: if you're a business owner and you have people that you send 1099s to for service, they're not eligible in your app. They have to do their own PPP. So the IRS is clear, the SBA has clearly said this program is eligible for independent contractors. They just have not provided the vehicle. I tell my clients, if you're an independent contractor, do not fill out the app as it stands right now, because you're ascertaining you have payroll and you clearly don't have payroll. About a week ago, they said April 3rd was going to be really the opening for businesses, and April 10th was going to be for sole proprietors and independent contractors. We're still hearing that might be the rumor. I just don't know how tomorrow people are going to be able to apply as an independent contractor when they don't have an application that says something like, what's your average monthly net self-employment earnings? That would make more sense. So you would go to line 31 of your CFC, and that would be your earnings.
So no real guidance on that just yet. So hopefully soon.
Yeah, I wish there was.
All right, and then I got another question here that just came in. I am a landlord with 16 tenants. I am looking for the best relief as all the tenants are struggling and several likely not to pay the next few months. My mortgages, taxes, and utilities continue. PPP doesn't appear to fit my situation. He has a question mark there. Or is it my payroll, or is my payroll my lost profits? If I can count on this being forgiven, I can extend the benefits by forgiving the rents owned.
Yeah. This is not intended for passive activities like rental real estate. It's not. You might want to pursue the EIDL, Economic Injury Disaster Loan. That might be a product that might fit a little better. Maybe Matt will chime in a little bit later with regards to that. But the PPP, remember the first P is payroll, paycheck protection. So if you're in that rental real estate or passive activity, it's probably not the program, but you'd have to look at all factors.
So maybe the EIDL would fit this case then for he or she, whoever texts us in.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. All right, Mike.
All right, let's flip on over to Matt, because I know you're, as Sam said when he opened, you're in the trenches here and going over the application process with business owners. Talk about the timeline there, when they could expect to be approved after applying, best practices with filling out the application, things of that nature. Take us away with that, Matt.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks, Sam, for having me on this. So I think the thing to do is to really, obviously, every bank's a little bit different. So make sure you talk with your bank. Make sure you really understand their form. Like I say, every bank's a little bit different. The biggest thing, obviously, as Lee touched on, is the payroll piece, right? That's the largest component of this. So it's with your salary, your wage, your commission. So what are you paying your employees, right? So make sure you have the documentation. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to do like two different things of it. It's either your quarterly payroll reports, which are 941s, your IRS form W-3, which is really your year-end summary of all your payroll. And that really checks that box. So make sure if you're going to handwrite it, make sure it's legible. The worst you can do is put together a sheet and you can't read what's on there, because right now banks are being asked by the SBA to verify this information. So my biggest suggestion is be as organized as possible and as neat as possible. So when you fill out the form, fill it out, take your time, make sure you can, if you write it, make sure you can easily read it. And the documentation part of it, in this case, keep it simple, right? So just make sure that if it's your 4 quarterly 941 reports, you just need the first page of it. You don't need to put all 20 pages of it together and then submit it. As far as your 401k information, a year-end summary is really all that you need. So whoever manages whatever your retirement benefits are, don't just input, and upload all your bank statements that show where you're pulling all your money from. Because again, banks have to go through and verify the information. So in this case, less sometimes can be more in this situation. From a timing perspective, you want banks to process these. The more stuff that we have to go through and review means the longer the process is. Now, that doesn't mean just don't submit anything, but just be very selective on summaries, right? Summary information, because at the end of the day, the borrower is attesting to this information. And give a little bit of context from a timing perspective. Most banks, if you think about larger scale banks, they're doing 4,000 to 5,000 commercial loans a month. And now, banks are being asked to do, 100,000 in a couple weeks. So if you put that in context, think of it that way. Think of just the manpower it's taking to review all the applications. So that's my biggest suggestion right now to anybody is, one, work with your current bank, figure out what their process is. Make sure you have your form filled out. Make sure it's legible, and make sure the information you're providing matches, but make sure that it's also easy to find and easy to read.
Matt, would you recommend that if I'm a business owner, I go and apply at multiple banks, multiple institutions, or should I just work with the primary bank that I do most of my business at? How should I approach that?
I would definitely work with the one bank and the one where all your primary business is being held. Because right now what you are seeing is when banks submit the application to the SBA, because we need to have basically the SBA is guaranteeing this loan. So the thing you really have to understand is this is actually the bank's money that's being funded, right? So it's not the government's money at this point. It's really the banks. It's the money the banks have on their balance sheet is what's funding these loans. So the only thing that the banks are doing with the SBA is they're getting a guarantee from the SBA, so that if, as Lee mentioned earlier, if you don't use the funds properly and now this money isn't forgiven and now it's a loan, you need to pay the bank back. Well, if you don't pay the bank back, now the bank's going to the SBA and going, hey, Mr. SBA, we lent this money to this borrower on your guidance. You're providing 100% guarantee. They have defaulted on the loan, so you owe me the money. So it's really the bank's money at this point. That's very important to understand. So once the SBA says, okay, Mr. Bank, we understand that the borrower defaulted on this loan. You have 100% guarantee. Show us your file. So at this point, we have to show, the bank has to show the borrower's application, the borrower's supporting documentation. So that's very important to understand. So banks just don't get this application, fund the money. We still have to review the file, because if we don't review the file and the borrower doesn't use the money in the purpose that was given for payroll, and now it's not forgiven and they have to pay the loan back, now the banks basically now are going back to the SBA to say, hey, you need to make us whole. So once the SBA gives us that basically guarantee number, then we can fund the loan. So again, I know most banks, I know our bank is already gotten SBA approvals and are now working towards funding the money and putting it on the street. So it is a very quick process if you're organized and you just work with one bank. Because if you go to different banks, what happens is they're going to send the same application, right? The same application has to go to the SBA. The SBA has to review and give a number. They're going to say, hey, listen, this borrower's identification number is already applied. So what you could happen if you did go to two different banks, both banks could reject you, because how do they know which one is accurate? So just go with one bank.
Okay. So let's take a step back there. It's April 9th, right? I call you up and I say, hey, Matt, here's my application. Everything's clean. Everything's documented. You have everything that you need. What's the timeline for knowing if I'm approved? And then if I am, what's the timeline when I actually get the money?
It's a great question. Again, every bank's going to be a little different. Some banks aren't set up to provide that communication back to the borrower that, hey, we received your application. It's going to take time. What we're really telling people is if you don't hear anything, that means that there's nothing wrong. If you hear something, that means either something wrong with your application, that means you missed a document. But I would really wait. I would probably give it 2 weeks. I would say if you haven't gotten anything in 2 weeks, then make a phone call. But I would say from start to finish, if you put in all your documentation into the bank and you haven't heard anything within 2 weeks, that's probably when you want to reach out. But worst case scenario, I would say 2, maybe 3 weeks at the most to get the money into your account at this part. But I know banks are really working much faster, much quicker. So again, most banks open this up on Friday, some on Monday, and we're seeing some that are actually getting their money today and even tomorrow. So it is a quick process. But again, I would still just because of sheer volume, I would give it at least 2 weeks.
And you made a reference to the amount of volume that is wildly abnormal, considering what a normal environment is to be looking at these business loans. If I'm not getting the service or I'm not getting the communication that I need, clock's ticking, right? I need the money. My business is still going. The world is still spinning. If I'm not getting the service from my current bank, what are my options? Is there anywhere else I can go? When does that application actually go through where I've actually submitted it and now I don't have options? Help me out with that if I'm not getting where I need to be.
So I kind of go back to what I said earlier. Banks are just, the sheer volume is kind of making it impossible for bankers to get back to their clients and give them updates consistently and constantly. I can tell you everyone's working on it. So I'm a relationship manager. I'm usually like on the street talking to customers and prospects. They have all of us actually processing these loans, right? So in every bank that I've talked to, other friends of mine that work at other banks and other peers, we are all literally being loan processors right now. So it's literally the entire organization of a bank is working on these. So that kind of gives you a little bit of the magnitude of it. So I would say, again, back to customer service, give us time, right? Just be patient with us and give us some time. We are all working on this, and we want to get all this money out to all the small businesses that are out there, because again, these are the businesses that are making this country run. So we're doing our best. So I would say I wouldn't panic. I wouldn't be frustrated at the point where you want to start talking to other banks and pulling your accounts out. I would just give it time. It's going to happen. But again, go back to it. Most banks are used to 4,000 loans in a month, right? And this is a big banks, right? Like the Wells, the Bank of Americas, the Truist, the TDs. We're used to processing 5,000 loans a month and across the entire organization. Now we're doing 125,000 in a couple of weeks. So there's just not enough time to make a phone call back to everybody. So just that everyone just has to be a little bit patient. Use some patience right now.
And just a point of clarification, the 2-week time period that you're talking about giving this application process, that's to know whether or not I'm approved, or that's soup to nuts, approved and funded?
So the goal really is 2 weeks to get it funded. From approval process, I mean, typically it shouldn't take more than a few days, because all you're really doing is reviewing the application, reviewing that did you supply the required documentation, and then we need banks need to get authorization from the SBA. So that should be a week process at most.
Okay.
All right. I have a question that came in here, Mike. This one's probably geared towards Lee. Lee, PPP is also an issue for an S corporation in which the owner and anyone else files gets paid through a K-1 instead of a regular payroll filing. Banks can't handle this now. Will this be available eventually for this situation?
Absolutely sure it should be. Remember, an S corporation is required to pay compensation to its owner. The definition is called reasonable comp. You just can't take S corp distributions, which aren't subject to SE tax. So any S corporation owner theoretically is on compensation, and $100,000 of their compensation is eligible for the application. That's part of that payroll. I think S corps can apply. I've had S corps already apply. If you go to the SBA website, the new application on there up the top left-hand corner has the various types of entities, and an S corp is one.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. And another question too, can I have an EIDL and a PPP loan?
Matt, me or you?
You can go for it. Thank you.
All right. So here's what we learned. When the president declared it a disaster, the EIDLs blew up. I think it was March 13th, and I had clients filling out the EIDL loan applications, but then we heard rumors of this Paycheck Protection Program. They were both driven by an EIN number, right? So you can have 2 applications in with the SBA under one EIN number, but you really can't, not these 2 programs, you can't have them both in force, I think is how I would say it. So if you did get an EIDL loan, you applied and you got it, and now all of a sudden you go for this loan, which has all the great characteristics that it has, this loan would take out the EIDL loan to pay it off, so that you would have just a net number left. Couple of real quick characteristics that I forgot to mention. Most time when you have debt canceled or forgiven, you have to pick up the income, cancellation of debt income. They added a provision in this PPP where it's not forgiveness of debt income. An even bigger one that's no one's talking about is you get to deduct the payroll that the government in effect is paying for you. So in a quick example, if you had a $100,000 loan and you used it on payroll, you get to, when you file your tax return this year, you get to deduct salary for $100,000, but you really didn't pay for it. So another great benefit of the PPP program.
Great. All right, Mike, that's all the questions on my end.
That was it that I had from my seat, Sam. I thought Lee did a great job explaining the program, and Matt, thank you for explaining the timeline and the application process.
Yeah, one more actually just came in, Michael. Sole proprietor with no payroll. Don't fill out the online PP application with my bank as the application is written today. Will the bank be required to update the application online?
It's not the banks. It's not their fault. So that gentleman's exactly right. I have the application in front of me. it says average monthly payroll. I don't know, and this is a federal document. You're filling out a federal document here. I don't know how someone could fill out the question average monthly payroll as a sole proprietor. They don't have payroll. So I think we still, again, we heard April 10th, which is now tomorrow. We still hear there might be a push out of an app that is more geared towards those sole proprietors. It's a question I get 25 times a day from independent contractors and sole proprietors. Can we apply for a PPP loan? As of right now, I know people that have. They've answered that question, what they're earning, but that's not payroll. So I don't know that that's even a correct answer. So I would sit tight maybe till tomorrow and see if they change the application.
You would think they would definitely change it. I mean, it seems only fair, right? I mean, crazy.
I mean, in the act, it says independent contractors, sole proprietors are all eligible. So they gave them the right to apply, but they didn't give them the mechanism to apply.
Right.
The app's there that you could say that's the mechanism, but there's questions on there that an independent contractor can't answer truthfully. It's a tough one right now.
Yeah, it's wild. Okay. All right, that's about it, fellas. Michael, you have any more on your end?
No, I'm good. Thank you so much. This was excellent.
Okay, yeah, and if anybody has any questions whatsoever going forward, you can text to that line that we gave there, 856-446-3644, or email me. My phone number is 856-297-6827. Call me. I can get you in touch with either Lee, Matt, or Mike, and try to help you guys out. As you can see, this is a fluid situation, and it is changing hourly. So hope this helped, and you guys enjoy your week, and thanks a lot.
Be safe.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate it. Thanks,
Thanks,
Sam.
Sam.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
You too.
You too.